good morning. How's everybody doing today? We're going to let the room fill up just a little bit, but wanted to offer a warm welcome to Gabriela coming and spending some time with us, and for Milton for coming and co-hosting with me. Always a pleasure, sir. Good morning.
GM.
Nice. How's everybody doing? Oh, we need to bring Gabriela up.
Yeah, doing good. Besides having no access to my personal account, which is you might
Oh,
see me hosting from the Turbo account, but that's okay. Glad to be here.
nice. Yeah, glad to have you. There she is. Good morning, young lady. How are you?
GMVD, y'all.
How's it going?
It's going well. This New York weather is being crazy right now, so I'm just trying to keep up with it. Every time I leave the house, I'm like, I just need to layer up. It's onion season, I guess, still.
Yeah, I was in town last week and it was like up, down, cold, warm. Yeah. Springtime in New York is no joke. It'll catch you out there if you're not prepared.
Yeah, I've already started what's it called? Like taking like Claritin or something the night before because I think my allergies are already in full force just because there's so much rain and flowers and everything. But I think it's going to be a very beautiful spring/summer because of all this rain.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I've been doing the exact same thing every night. So and I still have like this weird lingering cough either from my trip to Africa or NFT NYC or just being on the road for too long. So excuse my nasally allergy, airborne loveliness going on here.
You ain't the only one. I think I have lingering illness from NFT NYC as well. So, and I'm in South Florida. I got no other excuse. It's got to be that. It's got to be that.
I definitely have lingering sickness too, and now I've been staying in an old building that has like really hot, like they just have like the heat that just is like on 1,000%. So now I have to like open the window and have the AC on, so my face is just like swollen all the time. I'm just like, I don't know if this is okay, but I'm just like
Oh
ice rolling my
man.
face every day. But I can't keep up with this, so I booked a job this weekend in Miami because I need to get away from New York for a minute.
Nice. That's what's up. That's what's up. Yeah, I'm hoping this high altitude air out here in Colorado dries me out and I get a good couple of weeks to recuperate because this is ridiculous. Nobody has time for all this coughing and infirmed situations here. But enough of enough about all the struggles that we're all dealing with. Today we have a Gabrielafotoo, and we are so excited. Gabriela, I've known you for a number of years, and I always love asking this first question. We're just going to jump right in, and people are going to start to fill up. But I just always love hearing about who you are, what you're doing. How did you get to be here as a creator? Maybe not necessarily in the space, but just here in this time in this place. Yeah, just your origin story of how we are talking today. So please, at your leisure, fill us in on some of these amazing details.
I love it. It makes me feel so refined origin story. Like I've been around for eons. Well, we won't all be around for a long time, but I know our work will transpire so many generations, which is why I love creating art and meeting so many like-minded artists. So I just wanted to thank you all today for being here and for giving me this platform to be able to talk about my artistry and where I come from is something I definitely don't take for granted and something that makes me so excited. So to just thank you from the bottom of my heart for that and for to just continue to give artists these platforms and and just, a way to let their voices exceed their art and their own bodies. So thank you. But yeah, so I'm Gabriela. I'm a Colombian American artist. I've been taking photos since I was 10 years old. I was paid as like a middle schooler, I think, yeah, like middle school, to shoot portraits. And for me as a young person, I thought, wow, I can really dedicate my life to this. I really love to do this, and I can't believe that I can only grow on this skill I have with this one camera I have. I know, Paul, we've talked about this. My first DSLR I was handed to me was a Nikon D80, I believe, and I had a old school 50 millimeter lens, and that was it. And I shot with that for many, many years, and some dinky flash, and was paid as a child to photograph like amazing people. So it was really confusing when I shadowed a photographer in high school and then moved to New York when I was 17, and was getting offered all these amazing internships with Oprah in her photography department and all these different big brands, and they didn't want to pay me. I was like, wait a minute, I'm this young person and I've been paid since I was 12 years old. What's going on here? I'm definitely qualified and I've been shooting for a long time, so I kind of had to rework the industry. The industry was changing a lot from obviously when I was 10 to now, but definitely a lot slower than the industry of Web3 and everything that we've been through. So anyways, that was just kind of a funny thing I had to relearn of like, oh no, I have to pay my dues in a new city, in a new place, in a new, shooting fashion and shooting for brands. I had to really find my voice. And in college, I was shooting small things, knowing I still wanted to be a photographer, but having this landscape of New York was like so amazing yet very overwhelming. So I started shooting a little bit of street, but again, I was using like a rental Canon from my university, so I felt kind of like scared to use it outside. And it wasn't until I met my friends at Street Dreams magazine and the Sony Alpha Collective, where I was like, oh, okay, if you mob the streets with your friends and our cameras, like we're safe and we're together. So it just felt like you always had an ally in case, somebody didn't want to be photographed, or, it was like raining too hard or snowing and it was too cold. So that, and around like 2016, taught me that, okay, I don't have to always be taking photos by myself. There are so many other communities out there. Um, and then from there, I got into commercial photography too. So I was balancing shooting street and commercial. I also got my undergrad in BFA, focusing in photography, but I also studied business because I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And all of this brought me into a marketing job at Red Bull in 2014, and I was in-house with them for about 6 years total. And then around 2017, I went full freelance, and I've been freelance ever since. And then I think, Paul, your question also was like, how did you get into blockchain and all this? And through those communities, I started in photography with, we had J.N. Silva giving us all the alpha in 2020 of like, y'all need to be in blockchain and y'all need to see what's happening here and really bring your photography and mint everything you have as NFTs. So he was definitely the first one that told our community, hey, we all have to do this together. This is not a scam. Like we're going to do great things here. And then, with all ships and even the Sony Alpha community, everyone was just like full on together, supported, being like, okay, how do we bring our art to all new heights, all new levels, new collectors? And how do we start playing with all of these advances that AI technology has, and also just like blockchain had in general? This is like in 2021. But anyways, that was a lot of information. Let me know if you want to know anything more specific.
No, I mean that was amazing. I think I definitely latched on to an early part in your development, right? And where you had been doing photography at such an early age and being paid for it. It's kind of amazing how as social media started to become a part of what was needed to be a creative in this space, how it changed that exposure as employment type of situation, and how a lot of us are like, "Whoa, what are you talking about?" Like, "No, I this is something that I do for a living." Like you know, like the exposure for employment is just one of those things that like people say for people who are super hungry or maybe have another alternative source of income, but yeah, you can't pay bills on with eyeballs. I mean, maybe you can now with YouTube and all these kind of like profit sharing type of things, um, but yeah, back in the day, it was like nobody was doing anything. So it's interesting to hear that, and then just how involved in such a you like the photography and business was the exact opposite of how I entered the space. I was just like, I really like photography. I think I'm going to start to do this for a living, and had absolutely no understanding of what it took to run a business. So my first 3 years were like, it was just like I would just kept on making mistakes, and unfortunately had a bad accountant, which then made things even worse. So, but yeah, loved hearing that. Um, Milton, you got something to say there, buddy?
Yeah, I do. I agree with you, Paul, that it's interesting to see how this has evolved over time as far as getting your work out there, getting paid at a very young age, and then all of a sudden realizing, oh wow, I'm in a new city, a new place. I got to pay my dues, and I may need to do work for free just to prove my worth. And then, like you mentioned, social media is another interesting facet where we all became the product. We're giving out our work for free to get exposure. Now I have friends in the Web3 space like Violet Jones. She says, you want exposure? I'll show you my ass. Because now she's figured out a way to monetize her work. So I love the fact that we've got a new method to monetize this and go to kind of direct to consumer without having to work through a Meta or Facebook or an Instagram, and even new, platforms. I'll say the forbidden words here on Twitter, but the Purple app, where people are minting one-click mints on Zora or Lens protocol. So I find that really interesting. Gabriela, I'd be interested to know if you're playing around with any of that tech as well. Maybe you can touch on that. But my next question for you would be what you started to touch on as far as communities, because I think it's really interesting when you look at your profile on your website, for example, you do so many different styles: lifestyle, music, portraits, movement, street, brands, events. And I think you started to mention that, communities got you there to a large degree, whether that was an educational community, or whether it was somebody like All Ships, or working with Guppy, or your Sony Alpha crew. So maybe you could just tell us some inspiring stories about what community has done for you in this space, and some of your more memorable moments with these communities.
Yeah, thank you for looking at my website there. I'm always very transparent about this. I haven't updated that since 2020, since the pandemic. And I mean, there's a sprinkling of like new stuff, but that is a lot of my old work, which is crazy. And it's still getting me booked all the time. But like, I was more in that, old school mentality where like, I'm not showing my newest, latest, biggest brand on Instagram, or even when we were Twitter, right? Like, I was always like more sacred with my work, because I didn't want, I don't know. I think when I was younger, I was just like, this belongs to the brand, it doesn't necessarily have a part of me. And where now you do have to be like more selective, more curated, right? Like if you look at that older portfolio that I have, it has too many things, right? But all of those things really do embody all the work that I can do. But then it's like, okay, well, what does Gabriela like to do? It's like, well, I like to do all of these things. I love to touch all of these different communities and give my view through my lens. Through any given client. But what I really love to shoot, and I've this, from day one, is portraits. I love connecting with people. I love traveling around the world to be able to connect with cultures and figure out how they love to, have a morning routine, how they interact with markets, how they trade and buy goods, and how they just like live their lives in a way that's different to how I live my life. Um, I don't think I mentioned this, but I got my love of photography from my mother, who was an immigrant from Colombia and didn't speak English, but she had a film camera and would photograph every single family in our community and give them, double, triple prints of all the film that she would develop, and it just made people so happy. So I'm not saying she necessarily had like a certain look to her work. She just was always there shooting and always there handing people photos and memories. So that's kind of something I've taken um, to my career, to like always be there. And if the job and the client is fitting for me, I take it. And if now I've, been working for 10 years, now if the client doesn't align with my values, I give it to a friend, because I have a Rolodex of people I can recommend now because of Web3, because of I've traveled all around the world showing my art, talking about my story, and hearing other people that, um, you know, have similar stories to me, speak other languages I don't speak. Like, there's nothing cooler than being able to really connect with a client because of your background, because of the language that you speak, because that really speaks even further than art. Those relationships that I truly believe that the communities I started in Web 2 um, like flourished into the ones into Web 3, and for that I'm forever grateful. And now I feel like I'm just going off and forgot the question that you asked. Um,
No, you're on point. You're on point. Yeah, I was asking about inspirations, which is exactly what you just mentioned, even back all the way from your childhood with moms. And then maybe you can transition over to Web3 communities. I mean, you touched on it, you scratched the surface on some of the communities that you're involved in, but maybe you could give us an idea about how they've influenced you, whether that's Sony Alpha or what Jay and Silva really did besides onboarding, or what all ships, and even, I know you're involved with Guppy. Now I see Zanzibar in the room, part of the Guppy crew. So maybe you could talk about how that's influenced your course in Web3 and photography.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So when I worked at my first big agency at Red Bull, the people that I worked with for the last like 4 years, they were like, Gabriela, what do you like to shoot? What do you like to do? And I was like, well, I love shooting portraits. I love movement. Um, and I named a few specific brands that I had, a dream to work with. And they were like, you know what, we've got your back, and we're going to make sure to introduce you to the right people, and then you do the rest, right? Your work will show that you are able to work with these brands, and you're at the same caliber as these photographers. Like, I was put in a room with or in the same group as photographers that were like 10 years my seniors, right, in New York, and they were just looking at me like, oh, who's this little girl who doesn't know anything? I'm like, well, this little girl has been shooting her whole life and really just wants to do specific things that just happen to be, in the same group as these guys. And I ended up getting a lot of these jobs um, above these people, and maybe at the time they were kind of intimidated, and I was just like, okay, I'm never going to find my photography community, because it's like all of these people that weren't raised like me at all. I really don't have a voice here. But then meeting my collective of photographers, everyone had your back, and it was that feeling I had from that first agency I had when I was 19, that was like, you tell us what you want, basically you manifest what you want and you will get it. And that support I got from these communities was that times 10. It was like, hey, I've got your back, and we will go shoot this together. No one's getting left behind. You're not going to get this job because you're younger, because you're a female, because you're a person of color, because maybe you haven't been introduced to certain people. Like, um, there was just none of that. It was just all, very fair, and I always felt very supported. And all of those like stereotypes of like the industry in Web 2, I never really felt in Web 3. But then I also when I finally, I feel like, cracked the code after like almost a decade of living in New York and feeling very alone and like having to like fight for my art to like be seen, but then I had to like separate my name from it, because then people would like be like, oh, a girl took this, like what's going on there? And I'd be like, wait, what? So after I kind of finally broke through that and I could finally like associate my name and talk about my work, um, I started to realize that like in New York, we're just like, we live in a bubble, right? And this bubble is seen by the entire world as something so premium and something that people aspire to, right? So when I finally broke through and went through all these struggles that I had to go through, what felt like my entire life, I was like, when Web3, and this is like 2021 when Web3 was happening, and I started meeting more collectors, I thought, you know what? I feel really good about my career and where it's going. How do I help other artists around the world who aren't in my bubble, who don't have this constant, what is it called, like magnifying glass on them, who don't have all these connections? Like, how do I help them reach more collectors, more artists as friends? Put their work in galleries and new places that they wouldn't even dream of. Maybe even coming to New York and like showing in a gallery here would like change their lives or really motivate them to do something grander than they feel like bigger than their own bodies, kind of outer body experience. Again, I've been here since I was 17, and I've lived in New York my whole adult life. So I'm a true New Yorker, but I really have to think about my life and the life of my community outside and the way people look at it on the inside. So for the first few years in blockchain, I was just helping other people. I wasn't even touching my own art. I still have a huge archive of things I want to put out into the world and collections I want to keep adding to. But a big part of everything that I do and all the help I've ever gotten and guidance that I've gotten in my career, I want to keep helping other artists. And that's something I started doing with Guppy. They would put me on these calls with these artists that did not speak English, and I was like, no, 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 we are going to speak in Spanish. I speak French and German. I was like, we're going to make sure that you know how to express yourself and your art, so you can utilize all these amazing tools that Web3 has for you. And then I won't ever forget, this was like a really cool experience. I was at the Christie's Art and Tech conference that they have every year in New York, which is like a huge deal. It's usually around the summer, but now, all the dates fluctuate. And this was like 2 years ago, I think, maybe 3 years ago. And I felt really excited to be there. It was like really hard to get tickets. And this woman was like, worked at Christie's, and I think I tweeted something to JN or someone. I was like, why do only like famous or exclusive people get tickets to these events? Like, these are huge opportunities to meet collectors. Like, why is this so like closed off to artists? And this woman from Christie's like commented on my thing, and I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't have written this. And at the end, she was like, no, Gabriela, I'm going to give you a ticket. Like, I want you to be there. I think more women, more people of color should be at these events. And I really can't even begin to explain why it looks the way it is, or it is the way it is. And anyway, so I ended up going and met so many amazing people doing really great things all around the world. And I was able to even reach further because I believe like Keith Grossman was like talking on a panel, and we were asking questions. And at the end, I asked a more like out of the box question about people who are here to help artists and help underserved communities. And, if anyone aligned with me and the aid I wanted to help with other artists, like to please like hit me up after like the thing. And then all these people came up to me after, and I got to meet all these people, but it was actually really scary for me to like say and ask this question out loud in a room of people at Christie's. It was just like, okay, this just felt so weird, and I was really nervous. But at the end of the day, I'm really glad that I've gotten so many opportunities because of Web3 to really like speak my voice and find my people, right? And these conversations just like keep needing to happen, but a lot of times we either don't get the opportunities, or we're just like too scared, or it's not the right time. So I've definitely felt like I've broken out of my shell in the last few years, and now I'm able to juggle kind of helping others, but now elevating my art too, because I realized that it's not selfish to just elevate yourself, to really get a manager and back yourself and make sure that you're seen in galleries, because the more we back ourselves as humans, as artists, as people, we can help others even further.
Man, I loved every second of that. From talking about the New York community and how it is sort of a bubble, and having moved out here to Colorado from New York and seeing like the vast difference in what people consider community out here compared to back in New York, where it would be like, you know, you're out shooting or somebody's coming into town and they reach out to you and you're like, yeah, absolutely. Or if I'm not going to be around, I'll connect you with this person. I don't have that out here in Colorado. So it's very, it's almost alien to me compared to um, what I'm used to, for my whole creative career. And yeah, just hearing your desire to help others in the community is wonderful, and it's like it's something that I talk about frequently in my career. Is that I wouldn't be where I am now if I didn't have the developmental time with community. My perspectives were expanded, my understanding of photography and how to be creative, and then how to even find my own vision, my own lane that I wanted to be in. Um, Also, I can relate to the just the vast genres of photography that we as photographers oftentimes will have to do to survive, but it doesn't necessarily mean this is who I am as a creator. And I love that because, as a photographer starting out, I shot a lot of weddings, right? And it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to do. I'm good with people, so it made sense, and it was an easy way for me to. Well, I won't say easy. I'll take easy out of that. It was a good way for me to make money in the beginning, but I always attribute the fact that if I didn't shoot weddings, I wouldn't be able to do half of the things as quickly and be as adaptable as I am in a helicopter because of all the different scenarios that you have to shoot in throughout a day of a wedding. And yeah, just it's so wonderful to hear your heart for the community. And it was something that I definitely try and remind people of. And you said it wonderfully. Um, but coming alongside another creative or just tweeting something out, letting people know that, like, we're not alone, because this life can be lonely um, when we're putting ourselves out there on a daily basis of here's my here's my creation of the day, and I hope that you appreciate it, or I hope that you know I can support myself or my family through this vision or through this art that I'm creating, whatever whatever genre of art you're in. But to also know that you're not alone, that people that you admire are also going through or have gone through the same exact things. It's incredibly powerful. So thank you for sharing that with us. And I know that you said that when you're working on stuff, and I happen to agree with, like, when you're working for brands, you don't necessarily put it on your own because it belongs to the brand and it may not necessarily be who you are. But in this new Web3 experience, in your creative journey, would you like to share anything that you have in the works coming up soon, or something that you're focusing on, or whatever, anything you're working on?
Yes. So I do have this beautiful, passion for portraiture and working with brands. And I've shot already this year 4 album covers for smaller artists. So that is something that's, so special to me to be able to put um, imagery to sound is like right now like the thing that fascinates me the most. Just hearing, the stories behind all these albums, and how artists, can take years or a month and like curate this beautiful soundtrack that goes, beyond generations, and is something so wonderful. But when I talk to artists about, bringing their stuff on chain, they freak out. So that's that's still a whole nother separate thing. But while I'm doing this, I'm still adding to my street photos, which are, my own kind of representation of different portraits that can connect to people all around the world. So it's not just like, a photo that is like well lit and you can see someone's face, like, oh, you're like, I know who that is. It's more of like a mystery, right? Like who is that? Is it a male or female represented person? Is it, like, where are these people from? What are they thinking? What are they doing? So for me, Web3 has brought me this like fine art approach to art, which when I was 17 going to galleries in New York, like that was not a thing. I got dirty looks, I got people saying you'll never show in these places. And now I'm like, I'm gonna show in these places. I'm gonna have this whole collection of photographs that are not only prints that people can see and want to buy and envision hanging in their homes, but also can live forever on chain, which is just so amazing to have that element in my work. And I've, brought some of my fine art collectors onto blockchain, and all of that still fascinates me to be that like link for them. But yeah, so right now I'm still working on my funny coffee table book series. I have a lot of these like candid moments in New York and in Tokyo and in a few other cities that I visit frequently. I try to just go to places that really embody like my story as a photographer, and um, that I want to keep investing in going to all the time. I'm sure people have heard me say it before. I don't like people that go to one place and then claim the photography as their own. I'm like, you do not deserve to make money off those photos. You do not live there. You do not go back there. You do not give to the community. Like, I'm very like passionate about those things. So there's only a handful of places that I go photograph right now, and I think I will always photograph. And then I'll add, a few other places along my life journey as a photographer. Um, but I would say right now I'm working on two pieces. One is a self portrait. I've never released a self portrait before, so that's like a huge big deal for me to even go down that realm. But I know I see Joanne in the room here, and there's so many photographers that have really put themselves out there and started with their self-portrait journeys. And it's something that I've always wanted to do. But again, like, I loved separating my name to my photography, and then to have me as the photographer of me, it's like it's like a frame within a frame within a frame, and it just like was always very scary. So that's something that you'll see coming definitely this spring, because the shoots have already been done and I just need to figure out what platform to mint them on, just because now, we're dealing with base and we're dealing with ordinals and so many different things that I'm in meetings with collectors just to be transparent right now, just to see what's like the best fit. And then I'm gearing up to go to NFC Lisbon for the first time. It's been the conference that I've missed every year for the past 2 years that I've really wanted to go to. And now I have some work there, and I'm working on minting two pieces for that also. And then that's all I can tell y'all for now. Working on a book is a lot of work, which I know all of you can relate to. Paul has the most stunning book I've ever seen. So I would love to hear you talk about that one day, because I know it's not easy. But like I said before, I'm an old school photographer. Like, I want a physical book. I want a book that somebody can open in their home and like laugh, and like that it can relate to them. So I want to have like, I don't know, a scale of like 2 or 3 books that are just like hilarious to not only look at, but also like go through and just remind people of like the hilarious moments that you have running through a city that you don't live in, or a new city that you don't speak the language in, or there's just so many stories I feel like that people can relate to, that are either like borderline scary, oh, we survived that, or like, this is really funny. This is just like making our days a little lighter.
I love that. I've got a on my counter right now on my coffee table. I've got a monkey portraits book. It's really funny to look through. It's just monkeys making ridiculous faces, but I'll be interested to see what your subjects are, the people in the cities that you visit. I was curious to just go back a little bit on what you spoke about, Gabriela. It sounds like you've got a couple places that really feel close to your heart. New York is an obvious choice there, growing up in New York for your adult life. But you mentioned Tokyo, and then you've got that really cool piece, Face in the Rubble, and that's part of your Shadows series. Um, you talk about being lost in the streets, being your favorite place to be there. And yeah, I just wanted to know a little bit more about your history with Japan and Tokyo. What's so special about Tokyo for you?
Thank you so much for asking that. I don't think I've ever talked about that before, Milton. And so I went to Asia for the first time in this, it was like November 2019, end of November 2019, around it was like Thanksgiving into December. And when I was in Asia, I had been wanting to go there for years, and it just felt like it was on the other side of the world. So it was like very inaccessible to get to. Long story short, my friend had gifted me this trip there. And when I was there, I don't know, there was something that like said to me, like, the world is not okay, and these people know, like, this side of the world knows that something is happening. And at that point, I mean, Tokyo was really different. Everyone was masked up, but I just sensed this vibe that like I was safe there, like in that current time, but I had to make sure that myself and others were like protected. And then I was hearing all this news of like people just absolutely passing away at like young ages around that area. And I remember people being like, "Oh, it's just this freak accident." I was like, "Doesn't really feel like a freak accident." So, anyways, when I was there photographing, I was by myself. I felt so safe in those streets, but there was this like lure of like safety and like you need to make sure to like take this feeling to wherever you're going. So for me, I know this sounds like very weird, but in January I came back to New York. I went and got my Colombian passport renewed, my American passport renewed. I went to all my doctors. I shot 4 amazing album release parties that year and really great events. And then all this COVID stuff started like circling around, and my friends in Europe were like, "Yeah, this doesn't seem good. Like, we're gonna have to shut down the world." And everyone in New York was like, "We're never shutting down." And I was like, "I don't know, guys. Like, at these shows that I was shooting, I was already wearing a mask. I already felt like really like paranoid that like people are just out in crowds all the time in New York, and I don't know. I just had this gut feeling that I had to be a little like more careful." And then, of course, the pandemic happened. And I mean, I don't need to talk about that, but just being in Asia and like, and I went in May of last year. So, like, what, 2-ish years after the pandemic, maybe 3 years. And it was a completely different vibe, but it's still like the streets there, not only are they safe, which is like so huge for this, like, you know, tumultuous world that we're living in right now, where really you're safe everywhere, but you're also unsafe everywhere. And that's just like a real thing that we have to deal with when we live in big cities and in a world that's at war. But in Tokyo, I never felt like that. But I always felt like there was like spirits there that were like guiding you and telling you like things that you needed to know. So I don't know. I just feel this like I started the in the Shadows series because I feel like I can like follow people around in Tokyo, and but even if they saw me like following them, they would feel safe in this weird way because Tokyo is so safe. And obviously I'm not like actually like stalking them or anything, but I've also been out in Tokyo like really late at night and seen some really crazy scenes, which I'm sure people have heard stories about. And I'm just like, how am I even witnessing this? This looks like a movie. So anyways, with all that weird, unnecessary backstory, I just feel like Tokyo's so cinematic. It's somewhere that I feel so challenged as an artist. It's somewhere I don't speak the language, but also do feel very safe. And I just make all of these like mini movies in my head. So creatively, it just feels like I'm in this like warped TV of like the future, but also like the past, but also like the in between, which is like so crazy. And then the last time I was there in May, myself, Ovak Monaris, and Dave Krugman, we all went on this bullet train to like the temples and the bamboo forest, and we were all shooting out there. And that was the first time I got to like see the more peaceful, spiritual side of Japan. And that also, I feel like I was just so at peace and in a different way, right? I'm just like thinking about all the things that bring me inner peace that I want to bring to the world, not only to my work, but just to myself as a busy artist who has to be a marketer and, forward facing, but also like stuck in the cave editing and making my own projects and doing the most. I feel like I'm always just doing the most. Um, but trips like that remind me of why I love to do what I do, and that I need to go on more trips like that to more isolated places to get to channel like a different part of my creativity, to kind of add to those dark stories. Um, Something that's more grounding, that will make like my mind that's always going at 200% slow down and see like the bigger picture of life, and where I actually want to go with my certain projects, and what other parts of the world I want to feel this kind of peace in, or bring peace to, right, as much as I can with my work.
That's awesome. I love the just hearing how you've gone to places, and had a certain feeling about a place, and picked up on that, and really, but also brought like who you are and what you're putting out into the world is like, I feel safe, so I'm a safe person. Let's make uh let's make some art, and speaking of the pandemic, I feel like we met. My first memory of you was like on a whale watching boat in New Jersey, like right towards the end of the pandemic. Do you remember that?
Of course, it was so epic.
Yeah, that was like the weirdest thing. Like New York City in the background, and like humpback whales like jumping out of the water. That was the weirdest thing. But yeah, to hear how, it's something as artists that, um, if we're sensitive to how the world is, the energy, right? That's the whatever. If you subscribe to the understanding of frequency and how things change and how it affects us all, like it's it requires a sensitivity. Um, and going back to the whale watching thing, I remember us having a conversation about, wellness, and I think we were talking about diet, and we were talking about other things, but my through seeing you move through this space, I know that wellness and having a balance in life is important to you, as much as we can provide that for ourselves. So I always feel like that's super important, right? And hearing how you go to these places and unlock certain areas of creativity for you. How is it for you to balance this kind of this IRL? I need to be healthy. We all need this, right? So how are you balancing your time in Web3, Web2, IRL, and what's important to you outside of what we're all doing here in this little corner of a rat race here?
That is the $1 million question that everyone wants answered. It's like, take this orange pill and you will have balance. Take this orange pill and you will be okay, and the version of yourself that you always want to be. I wish I had the one pill or the one word that you could just say 3 times and then everything would balance out. But in all seriousness, it's been so many years of like overextending myself, running around the world, wanting to be there for other artists and other people and support gallery openings and conferences and um, so many things. But we forget in the rat race of like trying to keep up with everything, and our own art and our own bills and our own lives and our own families, that the only way to really be able to be present and have an impact is to take care of yourself. And a year ago, I was in a very bad place, like mentally. My finances were all over the place. I was just like not supported. It was like one of the lowest points of my life. And I thought, whoa, Gabriela, you've been working since you were 8. You've been shooting since you were 10. Like, how did you get here this many years later? Like, let's revisit everything. But I had really like put myself on the sideline and or my health, right? So I really like checked in with myself and I said, I need to change everything about my life. Um, and I started with being like, what needs to be the sharpest right now for me to succeed, for me to be happy, for me to keep creating, because that's what I care about most. And then I thought, my mind needs to be very sharp, and my mind is not as sharp as it used to be, or it hasn't even met its potential, right? So May of last year, it's literally been a year, which is crazy. I started doing contrast therapy, so uh, cold water and hot, and I started just adding time, right? So I would start at 30 seconds, 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and I would keep increasing this time. And I would do cold plunges, and then I would do sauna. But I started doing these cold plunges like in 2020. I would bike out to Coney Island and jump into the ocean when it was really cold. And then I would do I started doing Wim Hof breathing and doing like the 30-second or 60-second ice cold showers. But that kind of fell off after 2020 when I, got so busy and my life came back. So last May, I was like, I'm going to do this once a week, twice a month, and make sure that this is something that I'm keeping up with. Because the moment I can't sit in a ice cold bath for 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I'm going to know that like there's a block mentally and I'm not taking care of myself. So for me now, that is the like meter for like, am I okay right now? Or do I need to take a few steps back? Do I need to start saying no to things? Do I need to start taking time to just stretch and just be in silence with myself? Because before last May, I think it was the September before, I was still like in that really bad, like 6 months. And I couldn't even put a toe in cold water. And that's when I knew. I was like, oh, I'm like not well. Like, so from then to May, I was just like, something needs to change. So then from May to now, so I've been doing once a week. Some days I don't have a lot of time, so I have to DIY it. I go to different spas in the city and different gyms, and I have many communities now of people who are creators that are in wellness that do this contrast therapy. So I'm also in a yoga training right now. So I'm on week 7 of a 9-week yoga teacher training program. And every Saturday I have this lecture from 3 to 7 p.m. And this past Saturday, I had 2 photo shoots in the morning and then 2 the next day. And I was just like, I need to make sure to check in with me, or else I'm not going to be able to do my job and keep these amazing clients that I just got that have now booked me for the whole month of May, which are really going to help, bring all of my dreams to a reality. And they're doing great things working with great communities all around New York. So I went to this spa, like in a gym uptown, and I did a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 minute cold plunge like sequence where I was incrementing the time I was in the ice cold bath, but then I was also in between going into a hot sauna for like a minute or two. And I did this for yeah, the whole time during my online lecture for my yoga program. So I was like double time giving into myself and to my learning and knowledge and my calmness. And I just share this story because I've never done that. I've never been able to like be learning at the same time as I'm also, let's say, people like to call this like self-caring or whatever, but self-care is like this word that's like so, I think, misused in society because self-care looks different from day to day. It's not just things that are vanity, right? But they also can be. Like if I want to get my hair done to like be able to go present myself as a put together person, that is self-care, and that's something that's a part of my job and a part of who I am because I want to look a certain way. Um, for my client, I want to look professional. But anyway, so I make sure to definitely have these things in my life at least twice a month, if I can, once a week, just so I can make sure to challenge my mind and my body to the extremes of hot and cold is like how I've been able to realize like, okay, I'm going to be okay. I take deep breaths. Another thing that the yoga training has taught me is that I have to really take deep breaths. And I'm telling you, in the last 6 weeks I've been doing yoga every single day for the past 5 weeks, if not twice a day. And that's like a whole nother level of extremeness. That's just been like exhausting. But my breath is something that I've been working on with this cold and hot therapy. But the yoga practice while moving through all of these motions and thinking it and saying it has brought my breath work to like a whole nother level. And a few weeks ago, I ran a few miles for the first time in my like, I don't know, in like 6 years. And I was able to do it because my breath is like so in tuned and my mind is so focused and like just excited about powering through so many obstacles that I've had to jump over this year. But I really do attest to this training and working towards myself mentally. And there's just so many other things I can get into. We're learning about chakras in this yoga training. We're learning about Sanskrit and anatomy of the body. And all of these things are so important just to connect with humanity, right? And as I continue my life as an artist and I travel all around the world, I want to keep traveling around Asia. I want to get to the motherland of so many things, which is India one day. But, I think you really have to, um, as a person, as a creator, as a human, you have to just keep adding to your toolbox and make sure you're prepared to go to all of these places that you're not used to, right? That are out of your comfort zone, whether that be language or safety or food. And, all these things you kind of have to keep training. So what this training and this year has taught me is to like slow down a bit and just keep adding to the buckets where I need to just be able to fully get to the place that I want to be in my life and in my career.
I love that. I love that you're taking time for yourself because you can't do what you want to do for others without first taking care of yourself. So I think you've struck a nice balance there. And I wanted to see, because obviously you have mastered not only take caring of yourself, but supporting others that may not have the platform or the opportunities that you have. And in that light, I wanted to touch on Light.Art and MellamoArt. Is there any advice or suggestions you have for Light.Art on how we can best support the community of artists?
Of course. Let's see what bars do I want to share with y'all after all that. I would just say to just keep giving artists this platform to be able to talk. I would even say, and I don't, please, if you've done this already, which I'm sure you have because y'all are brilliant, but maybe getting artists that have had a spotlight here, find an artist that is either not in, hasn't been around the circles that we are in, or hasn't had the opportunity to kind of express themselves or their art, and maybe give them a platform would be really cool. I'm sure y'all are curating things for galleries that are coming up and for conferences that are coming up. So just having the community be a part of these things, I think, is always really exciting. When you see one of those, like, enter here to, be an artist spotlight, or enter here to have your work shown, is always so exciting, right? I feel like everyone's going through their day, working on their things, going through life, and then when they see that pop up and they have something to contribute, it really, like, makes someone's day, like, to even just be considered in a group of so many amazing artists. I've realized that in, like, the day to day that I'm doing here in New York. Like, I got pitched for this huge job with this big skincare brand, and I didn't get it, but I was like, the fact that I was pitched with, like, 15 amazing people means that, like, I can hang here, and it gave me a lot of self-confidence for that side of the art that I'm doing. So I think those kind of opportunities are always really important. So if you guys have something coming up this year, this spring, let us know.
Yeah, we absolutely. That's such a great suggestion of kind of pay it forward mentality, which we absolutely love. It's something that we've discussed in our meetings. We've recently discussed like having people in other areas of the world that aren't North America or aren't directly like, Western Europe that are participating here and could help us to find um, other artists that may not be seen. Um, and to that point, I know Abrahani, who's normally here, and she's the torchbearer of all of this for us. A passion project of hers is to have a Spanish speaking space. So if you ever want to participate in something like that, I'm sure that she would welcome you with open arms. But yeah, these are kind of the things that we want to. We want to support and uplift artists wherever they may be in their path, but especially some of the lesser known regions of the world that art is coming out of so many different genres that is beautiful, but they're not in our time zones, right? So it's something that we definitely strive to to shine a light on for sure. Um, with that being said, Gabrielle, if you have a couple minutes, we'd love to welcome some people up. Just if anybody wants to come up and give Gabriella her flowers or say hello or comment on something they've heard throughout the space, we'd love. Now's the time to request and come on up. And if you have a couple minutes, Gabriella, we'd just like to offer that time for people to just to connect with you directly.
Yes, of course. I have all the time for y'all. Thank you again for having me today. This has been so wonderful. I haven't done this in a minute, and I feel like all of these conversations need to keep happening, bringing on new artists. Hey, I'm an artist talking about my work, but here's, there's the different incentives that you're talking about that would be cool to do is something that I think Spaces had a long time ago of, like, okay, this random artist came from the world and they just sold their first piece, and I want that excitement back. And I think we definitely have enough momentum to do that. So I'm really excited, and thank you all for keeping these spaces going. And Abrahani and I have talked. We spoke in Paris and in New York about the Spanish speaking spaces. It's something I've been craving to come back. I had that in my schedule once a week for a year, and it was the most fun I've had in a long time, being able to connect with more Latin speaking artists. So we will definitely have that in the works, and I will support her and you guys in whichever way possible.
Awesome. Love to hear it. Nobody wants to come up and say hello to our friends today? Anybody? I guess if not, we'll just keep it moving. But
I have a quick
yeah,
question, if you don't
let's
mind,
go.
Paul. Nobody else is going to be brave enough to come up. We listened to some really cool musical scores from your collection Tierra de Sueños on the intro. So there were 1 minute tracks. And maybe just two quick questions about that collection. One, where did you link up with this beautiful jazz artist to get that musical score in place and collab with them? And then I noticed these adorable little girls and all these 13 101s look a lot like Benny's daughters. Are those Benny's daughters that I'm seeing?
First of all, the fact that you opened the space with that song, it literally made me tear up because I haven't heard that music in a long time, and it's something that I listen to a lot. What was it, like 2 years ago now? But yes, this was a project that started in 2021. It was during a time where Web3 was shifting all the time, but people started animating and people started, doing all sorts of crazy, fun, layering things to their work. And I had teamed up with Benny to do this kind of commissioned work with his daughters because they look like they could be in sorry, in English it's called like a fairy tale. And we went to Central Park, and I basically just curated this like beautiful like fairy tale. So Tierra de Sueños is basically like the Spanish version of like Cuento de Hadas, which is a fairy tale in modern time in English. And I used them as the two protagonists in this like nightmare daydream that I set in Central Park. I had just shot J Balvin, who's a Colombian artist from Medellin, and he had all these dancers like in these like red hoods, and I had like pitched Benny the idea that like there were these like spirits kind of like haunting his daughters like in their dreams, but the girls were so light and playful with these monsters because they were excited and fearless, like they were trying to give good into like this dark part of the world. And Benny at one point was like, I'm the hood, it's me, like with my daughters. Like it was just all this like really cool collaboration between me and one of my first collectors. Um, but then, when everyone wanted the photos to move and whatever, this took like 6 months to hire an animator and be able to like animate all these photos that I had taken and edited because it was so hot. Every animator in that 6 month period was like so busy on projects. Like it was like the hype of, or the height of like that industry just being completely booked out. So anyways, by the time this all came out, we had the storyline, and I am a lover of jazz and original music, and I had reached out to a few artists to collaborate because this was also the peak time of like NFT collaborations when they all started. And I was like, I don't want to just mint my photographs. I want to bring all these people along. I want people's families involved. I want, music and sound and lights and just everything. So I really made this like grand project. And then every one of those scores for the 13 chapters of that storybook that I made were all original scores of just like the artists interacting with the work and just tapping into like a dark part of themselves and a dark part of the world, but then also like sprinkling in light moments when the storyline got a little lighter and a little dreamier and then, return to reality. So that was the first project that I really got to just creative direct kind of and bring my love of like New York, portraiture, movements, music, just daydreams, just getting lost in storytelling. And it also brought a lot of like an ode to a lot of the work I did in college that was like children's illustration. I did like a children's book, and that's something that really interested me. So I was like, okay, how do I bring my like dark street photography into like what was like a part of my artistry a long time ago? And to bring this like volume one of like a very interactive, immersive storybook for like all ages to be able to enjoy. And yeah, we'll see now with like so many innovations and stuff. I feel like a volume two in some sense of the world could be remade, but it was definitely something that was hard to do at the time and really fun, but also like so chaotic. So as soon as I heard the music, I was like, oh, yes. And the last thing I'll say about this is I also worked um, side by side with a developer, and we custom did my whole website to be able to have a minting landing page on my website, that then I think would be minted and live on Foundation or OpenSea. And then I also worked with him to translate the entire storybook from English to Spanish. So at the top of that, there's just a translate here button, and then I translated everything about me and the story and all the different things about the project in two languages. And this is something that I wanted to use as a tool to help others and encourage others to make sure that their projects are not only in mainstream English, but like in their mother tongue and maybe in a few other languages. And I really hope and believe that now with like AI and so many things, that now people are more encouraged to have these select buttons, right? To just be more inclusive with whatever communities they're trying to have their art reach to.
Amazing, amazing. Gabriela, thank you so much for all these insights. It's always incredible to hear the connectivity that creatives have, even if we don't see it overtly on someone's timeline. How we can all relate. I love how throughout these last three some odd years, I've seen such a connection between photography and music. My degree is in music, so it's just one of those things that tickles me. I always like to hear, um, well, when I hear that there's this other level of connection other than admiration, right? There's an understanding of what goes into it. There's you know, there's been a pursuit of mastery in some way, um, and that and the way that you highlight that is wonderful. It's great. Um, I guess if we don't have anybody that would like to come up, Milton, unless you have something else, maybe we'll close out the space with a big thank you. And Gabriela, if you want to say any last words of wisdom for us as we depart.
Y'all, thank you so much. The last few years, like you said again, Paul, have been such a pleasure to get to know the whole community here. So thanks to Light Art, and thank you to you guys. I'm excited to see what else y'all have in the works and to see what other artists you have to highlight. And good luck with everything. You know, always sending good vibes, and make sure to check in with yourself. I love that we touched on that. It's something I've never really touched on in an interview, so that's really, really important. And to always challenge yourself as an artist, and remember to go with your gut feeling. A lot of people are going to tell you what to do, but if I've learned a lot in the last few years, is just to really go with my own gut feeling and do what I want, even if it's not, what's trending or what's going to get you, to whatever your ultimate success looks like, or just kind of take things slower than you think, because life is grand, right? And the journey is grand, and your art will always speak louder than words and transpire more than just our generation. So just remember to do that, and yeah, keep creating great art. Thank you so much, guys.
Thanks, Gabriela. Thanks again for coming, and we'll see you guys next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabriela. Thanks, Light Art. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
Talk
Milton,
soon.
thank you for coming alongside today, brother. I appreciate it. Your questions are always amazing, so I love it. Thank you, brother. Thank you.